Hey, everybody, and welcome into the Phillies Talk podcast presented by Team Toyota. I'm Corey Seidman. He's Jim Salisbury. And we have a lot to get to today because over the weekend, Major League Baseball sent this 67-page memo to the Players Union, which laid out the guidelines for 2020, big picture issues, but also some really small items. And my takeaway from it was just how difficult and complicated this is all going to be to pull off. And we're going to get to the specifics, the nitty-gritty of some of these guidelines. But what to you, Jim, stuck out the most?
How detailed and lengthy it was. And if you're trying to prevent the spread of a virus that's wreaking havoc all over the globe, some of it's just simply common sense. Stay away from people, don't spit. That said, common sense for everyday life might be really difficult to pull off in the baseball world. You mentioned 67 pages, incredibly detailed. I can, only imagine, when spring training opens, the manager usually gives a little speech and lays down a few rules. If you were to read off all these rules, it's going to take them 2 hours. I mean, some of the stuff is absurd. They don't want you to take a shower at the ballpark after a game. What happens if it's 98 degrees in Atlanta, and you're supposed to get on an airplane after the game? I think I understand the high-fiving and the handshakes and why they want it to avoid it. I mean, we're trying to avoid it in everyday life. I actually think a player hits a home run, he goes to high-five someone, the player can actually catch himself and say, oh, I'm not supposed to do that. I don't know how. Having been around the game my entire life, I don't know how you're going to stop baseball players from spitting. I don't know how you're going to stop football players from spitting. Hockey players, they come back to the bench. They big mouthful, stream right on the ice or right on the ground. I don't know how you're going to pull that off because spitting is second nature to a lot of these athletes, especially baseball players. I know it was founded as a country game 150 years ago, and country boys chewed tobacco. Well, guess what? Not as many guys are chewing tobacco, and they still spit. They spit sunflower seeds. They spit water. They spit just good old spit just for the sake of spitting because it's what ball players do. I don't know how you're going to stop that. I know that they can't really punish guys because they're trying to break a habit and change behaviors. They're trying to dissuade you from doing it. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, we're also going to get to a lot of your questions here later in the show. In fact, I'm getting a call right now from Botswana. The Phillies Talk listeners, they're everywhere. This isn't a spam call. This is someone who's curious about the 2020 Major League season. Jim, one of the things that one of the things I noticed in that report is that it frowns upon throwing the ball around prior to an inning. Around the horn.
Babe, you want to. Guys love to throw the ball around infield, look really sharp and quick. A little footwork, little crow hop, let's go get him, little hum babe. You can't have that. It's like you can't even sit in the dugout anymore. You got to sit in the stands, and you got to bring your own rosin bag.
Well, what about the defensive replacement? What about the guy who switches position? Like Scott Kingery, we could see switch positions a lot this year. He could be playing center field and move to third base if the Phillies optimize for defense in a certain way. And it's like he wants to take his reps prior to that next inning. I know that's a very little thing, throwing the ball around the horn, but there are a lot of details in this that go counter to what we've seen for 100 plus years. How about the players being told that they can't even get hotel room service? Guys are
good luck on that one. These teams, they don't even stay in hotels unless they have 24-hour room service. So good luck on that one. Now you can't leave the hotel if you play a 1:00 game. You can't leave the hotel after you take your hotel shower. They forwarded the 67-page document to the Players Association. I am expecting the Players Association will attempt to massage things and have some tweaks and make things a little more palatable. And they're going to have to because, as we've said all along, every time we talk, health and safety is number one. I just think they're going to have to make a few adjustments to really make some of these things work. I mean, they're not even going to exchange lineups at home plate because that violates social distancing. I mean, you get a pitcher at home plate. Well, we're going to have the DH, so that's moot anyway. But say you got a batter at home plate and third base coach goes through a whole bunch of signs and he misses one. Now he wants to talk. You can't talk. You can't go down there and say, hey, I don't understand your signs. It's going to be baseball as we've never seen before.
How do you enforce some of this stuff?
Well,
if a guy spits, do you take him out of the game? Does he get ejected?
That's a big question. How do you police it? Because, like I said, you can't punish a guy because he's having a hard time breaking a habit, spitting or something like that. You try to appeal to their, maturity, and you try to say this is the best way. You've all been quarantined now for 10 weeks and taking all these steps to sanitize and social distance. It's just an extension of that, trying to prevent people from contracting or spreading the disease. It's for your own well-being, for your family's well-being. Ultimately, Corey, I think the ballparks are going to be some of the safest places going. These guys are going to be, tested. They're going to have their temperatures taken several times a day. They're all in that 20 to 30 range, which, you're young, not high-risk age groups. The ballparks have all been thoroughly sanitized and cleaned. So once you get into the ballpark, you might be in one of the safest places of all.
And you talked to John Kruk about this. There's an article up at NBC Sports Philadelphia.com with John Kruk's thoughts. But what were some of the things that he had to say? I'm just thinking about how the 93 team as a whole would have responded to some of this.
They would have spit in the face of it all. You know what I mean? It was I had a good time talking to Johnny. I was trying to think of somebody to talk to about the art of spitting. And there were two great spitters on that team. Three of them, really. The late manager, Jim Fregosi, Lenny Dykstra, and John Kruk. And Kruk, I got Kruk on the phone, talked to him a little bit about it, a lot of fun. And he is, like me, wondering how you're going to break ball players of habits like this. Because, he was a tobacco chewer. He ended up quitting tobacco, but he still spit a lot. He said he still spits when he plays golf. It's going to be really difficult to break. Said he loved talking to and kind of carrying on with the runner at first base when, between pitches, he'd try to have some fun with the guy. And, they don't want you to do that. They don't want you to be kibitzing around the bag. And it's tough for him to wrap his head around. But those 93 Phillies, they were a scruffy bunch, and they always had some projectile coming out of their mouth, be it a wad of tobacco, sunflower seeds, or spit. In fact, the comedic geniuses at Saturday Night Live noticed that, and I recalled seeing this skit years upon years ago, and I found it on YouTube, and it's during the '93 World Series, and they have I think it's 5 comedians. They have Adam Sandler and Phil Hartman and Tim Meadows and Mike Myers. Mike
Myers.
And Chris Farley, of course, is John Kruk. And they're all decked out in Phillies uniforms. And Anne Murray, who is a Canadian singer that my mother used to listen to, is singing the Canadian national anthem. And they end up dousing her with spit. It's just so perfect. Phillies uniforms, big streams of spit. John Kruk, who better to talk to about spitting than a 93 Philly, than the co-captain of the spitting with Lenny Dykstra and John Kruk, and I actually unearthed that video, and it's embedded in this story, and it gave me a great laugh. I defy anybody to tell me it's not funny. It's grotesque, but it's funny.
Highly recommend that people check out that article. The video is within that, embedded there. And shout out to Phil Hartman, one of my all-time favorites. Anytime we can get a Phil Hartman mention on the Phillies Talk podcast, I'm all for it. Okay, so Jim.
Hey, you know what? News Radio, a very underrated late 90s sitcom.
Amen.
I'm not even a huge sitcom guy. I really enjoyed that one.
A lot of stars were made in that show, or just, got even more famous. Jim, we got a lot of questions on Twitter about everything that's going on right now. And surprisingly, we got the one question that was asked the most pertained to whether announcers and reporters are going to be in the stadium. And we don't really have the definitive answer to that yet. But, I've thought about it. I'm sure you've thought about it too, just how differently a lot of us are going to have to do our jobs in this uncertain 2020 season, like the pregame conversations where a lot of relationship building is done, or you're able to, unearth some good stories. That might be completely different this year.
I think it probably will be. I'm not sure. One, I'm not sure we'll be permitted in the ballpark. Two, if we are, I don't know that there'll be clubhouse access. I've heard two different ideas on this. One is they may let a limited amount of media in, and two, they won't let media in because they're trying to lighten the load of people in the ballpark, and media would be one of the first cuts. I even hear a lot of team personnel will not be there. They're going to define who's essential, and probably the guys who write about the game are probably not essential. As far as the broadcasters, we're located right across the street. I could see our broadcasters going over there and sitting in the booth. I don't know if they'll be on the road trips. And I've heard road trips could be lengthy, 2 weeks or even 3 weeks, I've heard, just to, space out the travel like that. But I don't know if we're going to be there. I don't know if we'll cover the game like we've been covering it for the last 10 weeks, mostly virtually. I would imagine there'll be some type of interview process video-wise after games because, baseball can say it all they want. They still need people to cover the game because that's free promotion of your product, and that's good. So remains to be seen. I'm hopeful that we can do it the old-fashioned way. I fear we might not be able to.
Talking about essential personnel, is the Phillie Phanatic essential personnel?
I think the Phillie Phanatic, he certainly has been essential for 42 years because he's the best mascot in baseball. He's best mascot in sports and, does a great job connecting with fans. I mean, I still look down on him a lot of nights and find myself transfixed on him and laughing to myself. So I guess he's not. Mascots apparently are not essential and will not be permitted. I'm not sure why, because I think it would be hilarious in an empty ballpark to pan over to section, 312 and see the Phanatic sitting there all alone. I think that would be funny. Why not? He's not only would he be 6 feet from people, he'd be 600 feet from people, and that would be funny. So, but apparently mascots are not going to be there, at least in this proposal. Like I said, I still think they're going to massage some things, and maybe he can work his way back in there. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the visual that you just laid out would be pretty funny. A lot of the Phanatic's funniest antics, best antics, are messing with opposing players.
Yeah.
And that kind of that's not going to be permitted. That's not social distancing. So yeah, I don't know. I would consider him essential. I think that's one of those things that Phillies fans you need things that make this feel like it's always felt, right? Even though it's not going to be that way, we need themes and just things that we're used to that kind of let that all fade away and let us, while we're watching a baseball game for 3 hours, kind of drift back into that normalcy.
Agree. And but I also, like I said, I understand they're trying to lighten the load, and in that case, he's probably not essential. So we'll see.
Hey, something I was thinking was that because they showed that diagram of where players would be sitting in the stands, like the first seat would be open, the second seat would be occupied, 3 seats off, and then another player. I'm thinking somebody's going to get hurt on a walk-off home run because guys there are going to be some guys that are jumping from the dugout onto the field to go celebrate, right? And that's another thing, celebrations. How do you celebrate it? You mentioned it earlier, the high five. It's one thing, okay, you're not going to high five a teammate when you cross home plate, but how about that entire guys tackling each other and going crazy? That's all going to be gone too.
Yeah, in the last decade or so, they have these beatdowns at home plate. They chase the guy across the field. They rip his uni off, unless you're Jose Altuve, and maybe you don't want your uni ripped off. So, yeah, I don't know how they're going to celebrate. They'll figure out something. They're pretty creative. But, I mean, look at Bryce Harper. He had a secret handshake for everybody. And maybe he's going to have secret sign language handshakes.
This next question comes from Phil Shirt 365. What do you think an extremely shortened season or no season would mean for Didi Gregorius? Would the Phillies try to sign him to another one-year deal? Would he be interested in another one-year deal? I'm of the mind that it's like, well, first off, we don't know, but I'm of the mind that, like, if you were signing a prove-it deal to come into 2020, right, and there's no season, you would probably want to sign another prove-it deal into 2021 unless the offers materialize. It's also based on who else is on the market at your position. But, like, how do you it's like the shortstop position wouldn't be solved for the Phillies next season without him.
Is this if there's no season?
It's in the event of a shortened season.
Well, shortened season is going to. I think it's going to affect the free agent market next year, at least that level, the Gregorius level of free agent market, kind of that mid tier, because I think revenue is going to be down and it's going to be felt in free agent spending. I don't think it'll be felt at the Real Muto, Mookie Betts level, but at that middle tier level, that could affect a guy like Gregorius and make him more apt to sign another 1-year deal. So that could work in the Phillies' favor. So I don't know how it's going to play out. But, without baseball, without a chance to prove that you're back healthy, back to being your old self, you may have to take another one, and that could work in the Phillies' favor.
Your NBC Sports Philadelphia podcasts are now on the My Teams app. You can listen to Phillies Talk, Eagle Eye, Sixers Talk, and Flyers Talk right now on the My Teams app. All right, this next one comes from our guy, Mark Bepler, who's curious about whether fans would feel the same euphoria from a World Series win in a shortened season. Would it feel the same, or would it be way less impressive, in his words? I really don't know. It's like you don't know until you see it. How, if the season were 40 games, it wouldn't mean as much, but 82 games is representative. That would be and I still think that when it comes down to it, with playoff games, multiple playoff series, you're going to be playing over 100 games as it is. That feels like enough to determine who may have been the best team anyway.
Yeah, some people are not going to feel the same euphoria as a 162-game season, but some people will. I'll say this. They're proposing a 14-team World Series tournament. I think that could be exciting as heck. Might see some great drama, some great ball games, and if your team comes out on top, you might be pumping your fists, and it might be very memorable and very exciting. So I think in that case, beauty will be in the eye of the beholder.
Next one from Slicky Ricky 17. We got this question in several forms, but the gist of it is it seems ridiculous, in his words, that owners have profited immensely year after year amid all of this tanking, but can't fathom a possible loss for a single year. We talked about this on our last podcast. It's a complicated issue. It's the game stands to lose billions of dollars. There are going to be losses felt by everybody within the game here. What do you think about that? There was a piece of The Athletic, which there was, one quote from an agent that detailed that the Royals, for example, have not spent money in 4 years, and now they're talking about how they're going to need to furlough employees or could be facing these losses.
Yeah, it's a tough one, but these teams are definitely sustaining losses. I think with owners, you have personal wealth, and then you have the operating wealth that you run your business with, and that's the revenues you take into that business and then disperse to employees and funnel around your organization, your company, to make it better, to improve it. There's no doubt the game is not taking any revenues right now. Phillies are not furloughing people or not letting people off. The only team in baseball, I think, that has professed not to do that so far. So, it's a tough one there. I understand the players want to be paid. I understand the owners want to have a revenue split, and they don't want to simply give them the prorated salary they were supposed to get in 2020. Honestly, I'm just hopefully kind of figure it out so we can figure it out here in the next couple of weeks, so that maybe they can be some baseball. Yes, the owners don't want a loss. That's why they want to get back on the field. Either way, there's going to be a loss. They hope that the postseason, as we talked about, 14 teams, kind of expanding the postseason will mitigate some of that loss, because postseasons can be rather lucrative. So we'll see.
Did it surprise you that the Phillies, I know they're a family-oriented organization, always have been, but did it surprise you that they came out and made that commitment to their employees through the end of October? Because if you look across sports, like I just saw the other day, the Sacramento Kings announced a slew of furloughs. We mentioned the Kansas City Royals. There are other major league teams that have gone that route. The Phillies really stand out, not even in just baseball, across all the major sports in terms of committing to their employees, their full-time employees.
No, it doesn't surprise me. I covered the team for a long time. A lot of teams had layoffs during the work stoppage in 94, 95. The Phillies did not. They laid off no full-time personnel. As you mentioned, they've always run this team like a family, as long as I've been around. And even before I was around with the Carpenters, and then Bill Giles, David Montgomery, and now John Middleton. they run it like a family. They try to take care of their people, and hats off to them for doing that. It doesn't surprise me because of their history.
Phillies Talk is presented by Team Toyota, and Team Toyota is kicking off a new season with safety, savings, and service. Visit today at teamtoyota.net to be part of the team and stay on the road to victory. All right, Jim, this is the last one. Remember coming into this season, before we knew about coronavirus, the big story was going to be how teams responded to the Houston Astros and how many times an Astros player is going to be hit by a pitch and how Houston would be received in every visiting ballpark. We got several questions along those lines of the Astros and the Red Sox that have their sign-stealing scandals been almost forgotten by all of these more important concerns. Do you think that the Astros players have long memories? It's not like they forgot what happened just a few months ago. But do you think it's going to be the same way?
I'm sure the Astros and the Red Sox, if there's a silver lining to this shutdown, it's that, it's knocked them off the front pages and kind of taken some of the glare off their infractions, and especially in Houston's case, to me, just egregious infractions. I would go as far as to call their World Series rings fool's gold. But like you said, people have long memories, and once the game is back between the lines and guys are playing again, the glare is going to go right back on the Houston Astros. It's going to be, okay, baseball's back. We're not shaking hands and we're not spitting, but we're digging in the batter's box, and hopefully the Houston Astros aren't cheating. It's gonna bubble to the surface again, and baseball plays 82 games, and a couple of those stud Astros are, hitting $190 after about 2.5 months. People are going to say, see, it's just going to be the same old stuff that would have been topical in late March had the regular season begun on time. So though this has quieted and the furor has quieted, I still think it's there. And there will be some type of a sequel, much deserved attention to those cheating Houston Astros.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that sequel. And something else I'm looking forward to is that in the month of June, we're going to be re-airing on NBC Sports Philadelphia the Phillies' entire 2008 playoff run. So, all the notable games, but also some of the games that you may have forgotten, even the games the Phillies didn't win during those series. We're going to be showing them again. I can't wait to watch them with fresh eyes all these years later. You and I kind of have been reliving a lot of stories from that era as we've gone about this whole quarantine, and the recent podcast we had with Shane Victorino, and the conversation you had with Matt Stairs a few weeks ago when we were redoing that simulation of the 80 versus 08 teams. But is there anything in particular you're looking forward to rewatching in those games? I mean, I would assume it's been a little while since you've seen them too.
The 08 World Series or postseason?
Just the entire postseason.
Well, geez, I mean, the Matt Stairs home run, I've told the story before. My knee still hurts because I was sitting in this cramped press box in Dodger Stadium, and when the ball came off the bat, it kind of lurched upward a little bit. You couldn't help but not. And there was like a metal electrical box or conduit underneath the press box. I smacked my knee on it. And, what are we, 12 years later, it still hurts. Honestly, I couldn't feel it. So that was a great memory. Victorino's home run before that was pretty amazing. Just that whole run. Charlie Manuel's mom dying in the middle of that postseason was really, my gosh, it really was a poignant moment, because in that whole postseason it seemed like the world was kind of shining on Charlie a little bit. Baseball lifer, and the world was kind of baseball world, and the world in general was waking up to what a special guy he was, and I thought he showed a lot of courage. He's lost his mom during that stretch, and he, buried her on an off day. He continued to manage through. His team really rallied around him. So that's something I really remember. Obviously, the delay with the rain is another thing. Watching Cole Hamels try to grip the ball in the rain, and watching, I think it was B.J. Upton sliding into second base, and you could see the puddle splashing around his legs and feet as Utley went to tag him. Utley's great play in game, was it 5? Tim McGraw throwing out a first pitch. I remember so much about it. It was, and having covered the team through some real dark years, late 90s at the Vet, it was really kind of neat to see, all those great players come together, and they had the big three with Lee Howard and Jimmy Rollins, but they had a great supporting cast: Worth, Victorino, Brad Lidge, obviously perfect, Ryan Madsen, the manager. I thought Davey Lopes did a great job with the base running, especially turning Victorino into a much better base runner. So too many memories to probably focus on just one. I'm looking forward to seeing that entire postseason again.
Same here. And that's going to do it for this edition of Phillies Talk, presented by Team Toyota. I'm Corey Seidman. He's Jim Salisbury. Catch you later in the week.